Time waits for no one. The Tale of Karan and the Clockmaker. In a small town cradled by emerald hills and kissed by the gentle ripples of a winding river, there lived a young man named Karan. The town of Wardampur was a place where time seemed to linger, where mornings bloomed with the scent of jasmine and evenings glowed under the embrace of lantern-lit streets. It was a town that believed in dreams, and Karan was its brightest dreamer. Karan was no ordinary soul. His eyes sparkled with ideas, his laughter carried the promise of greatness, and his words were visions of a future where he'd leave his mark on the world. His teachers saw in him a scholar who could unravel mysteries. His parents saw a son who would make them proud, and his neighbors whispered that Karan was destined for something extraordinary. He'll be a writer, some said. No, a musician, others argued. Perhaps an inventor, dreamed the children who trailed him, enchanted by his stories. But for all his brilliance, Karan had a flaw, a quiet, creeping weakness that no one could quite pin down. He treated time like an endless river, always flowing, always there. "What's the hurry?" he'd say with a grin, tossing his dark hair out of his eyes. "I have got years ahead of me. Tomorrow's as good as today." And so, instead of chasing his dreams, Karan drifted. Mornings meant for studying were spent sprawled under the banyan tree with his friends, swapping jokes and sipping chai. Afternoons meant for writing the novel he swore he'd finish were lost to the glow of his phone, scrolling through videos and memes. Evenings meant for learning the guitar he'd beg his father to buy gathered dust in the corner, while Karan binged movies until the stars faded into dawn. His father, Mr. Sharma, was a schoolteacher with a voice as steady as the river and eyes that carried the weight of lessons learned. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, he'd sit with Karan on their creaky porch and say, "Son, time is a silent teacher, but its lessons are strict. It doesn't wait for anyone, not kings, not dreamers, not even you. Value it now, or it'll teach you the hard way." Karan would laugh, his voice light as the breeze. "Papa, relax. I'm young. There's time for everything." And his father would sigh, his gaze drifting to the horizon as if he could see the hours slipping away like sand through his fingers. One crisp autumn day, Wardampur came alive with the annual village fair. The air buzzed with the chatter of hawkers, the jingle of anklets, and the scent of roasted corn and sugary jalebis. Karan, ever drawn to the hum of excitement, wandered through the crowd, his heart light and his pockets jingling with a few coins. Amid the chaos of colorful stalls and spinning Ferris wheels, his eyes caught something peculiar, a small, weathered tent tucked away in a quiet corner. Its faded sign read, "The Clockmaker, Master of Time." The words seemed to shimmer as if beckoning him closer. Curiosity tugged at Karan's heart, and he stepped inside, brushing past the heavy velvet curtain. The tent was a world unto itself. Shelves lined the walls, groaning under the weight of clocks, grandfather clocks with pendulums that swayed like heartbeats, pocket watches etched with forgotten names, and cuckoo clocks frozen mid-chime. The air hummed with a soft, rhythmic ticking, as if the tent itself were alive. At its center sat an old man, his face carved with wrinkles that told stories of centuries. His beard was long and silver, his eyes sharp as a hawk's, and his hands moved with the precision of someone who understood the pearls of the universe. "You seem lost, young man," the clockmaker said, his voice low and warm, like the crackle of a fire. "Tell me, do you know the value of time?" Karan smirked, leaning against the table. "Sure, I know it's important. But I'm young. I have got plenty of time to figure things out." The clockmaker's lips curled into a smile that was both kind and knowing, as if he'd heard those words 1,000 times before. He reached into a wooden box and pulled out a wristwatch, its face cloudy with age, its leather strap warm but sturdy. The hands were still, yet it seemed to hum with a quiet energy. "This is no ordinary watch. the clockmaker said, his eyes locking onto Karan's. "Wear it for 7 days and it will show you the true weight of time. But heed my warning, what you see, you cannot unsee. What you learn, you cannot forget." Karan raised an eyebrow, amused but intrigued. A magic watch. It sounded like something out of the stories he used to invent as a child. With a shrug, he fastened it to his wrist, the cool metal kissing his skin. "All right, old man. Let's see what this thing can do." The clockmaker only smiled, his gaze following Karan as he stepped back into the sunlight. The next morning, Karan woke to the sound of ticking, soft at first, like a whisper, but growing louder with each passing second. He glanced at the watch, its hands now moving, steady and unrelenting. "Weird," he muttered, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He planned to start the day with purpose, to finally crack open his math books for the competitive exam he'd been dodging, but his phone buzzed with a message from his friend Arjun. "Yo, let's grab some samosas and chill by the river." "Why not?" Karan thought. 10 minutes won't hurt. 10 minutes turned to 20, then an hour. Laughter echoed, samosas vanished, and the river sparkled under the noon sun. But as Karan stood to leave, the watch glowed red, a deep, pulsing crimson that sent a chill down his spine. Before his eyes, the air shimmered, and images flickered like a broken film reel. He saw himself at a job interview he'd skipped last year, claiming he wasn't ready. The interviewer's face faded, replaced by someone else taking the job, a job that could have been his. He saw the guitar he'd abandoned, now played by a stranger on a stage, earning applause Karan had dreamed of. He saw the novel he'd started, its pages blank and forgotten, while another writer held a book with a title eerily close to his own. The visions vanished, leaving Karan breathless. The watch ticked louder, tick-tock, tick-tock. It wasn't just a sound, it was a warning. That night, he dreamed. In his dream, he stood in a vast, empty room, staring at an older version of himself. The man's hair was gray, his shoulders slumped, his eyes heavy with regret. "Why didn't you use your time?" the older Karan whispered. "You had so much, and you let it slip away." Behind him, a clock loomed, its hand spinning backward, showing moments Karan had wasted, hours on his phone, days lost to excuses, years untouched by effort. He woke with a start, his heart pounding. The watch glowed faintly, its ticking now a drumbeat in his mind. The next morning, Karan didn't linger in bed. He sat at his desk, the watch glinting in the sunlight, and did something he'd never done before. He made a plan. With a pen and a tattered notebook, he wrote down his dreams, each one a seed he'd neglected for too long. Exercise daily to feel strong and alive. Learn graphic design to turn his sketches into art. Read 1 book a month to feed his mind. Prepare for the entrance exam to secure a future. Help Papa with his schoolwork to give back to the man who believed in him. He taped the list to his wall, where it stared at him like a promise. When his phone buzzed with another invite to chill, he hesitated. The watch ticked, sharp and clear. "Not today," he texted back and opened his math book instead. Days turned to weeks, and Karan became a man possessed, not by haste, but by purpose. He jogged along the river at dawn, the watch keeping time with his steps. He spent evenings on graphic design tutorials, his fingers dancing across the keyboard as he brought his visions to life. He read books that stretched his mind, underlining passages that felt like keys to new worlds. And when his father needed help grading papers, Karan was there, their laughter filling the house as they worked side by side. Every time procrastination whispered, the watch would tick louder, its glow a gentle nudge. "Your time is finite. Use it well," dote, and Karan listened. Months later, as spring painted Wardampur in shades of green and gold, Karan saw the clockmaker's tent at the fair again. He stepped inside, now a different man, his shoulders straighter, his eyes brighter, his heart steady. The old man looked up, his smile warm as ever. "You have changed," the clockmaker said, his voice laced with pride. "The watch has done its work. You have learned the lesson of time." Karan unclasped the watch and handed it back, his fingers lingering on its worn surface. "I don't need it anymore," he said softly. "I hear it ticking in my mind, always." The clockmaker nodded, placing the watch back in its box. "Time is a gift, young man. Carry its lesson with you, and it will never forsake you." Years passed, and Karan's life bloomed like the hills of Wardampur. He aced the entrance exam, earning a scholarship to a prestigious college. His graphic design work caught the eye of clients from beyond the town, his art a bridge between his dreams and reality. He wrote stories, not the novel he'd once abandoned, but new ones, shared with the children who now trailed him, wide-eyed and inspired. One evening, Karan stood before a crowd at his father's school, now a place where his own dreams had taken root. He held up a faded photograph of the watch, its image a spark in the dim auditorium. His voice was steady, but it carried the weight of a man who would walk with time and learned its truths. "Time doesn't scream or shout," he said, his eyes sweeping the room. "It doesn't beg you to listen. It just walks away, quiet and relentless. It never stops, never waits, and never returns. Don't let your dreams expire in the waiting room of tomorrow. Respect time, and it will reward you with a future worth living." The crowd erupted in applause, but Karan's gaze lingered on his father, who sat in the front row, tears glinting in his eyes. Mr. Sharma's nod was small but heavy, a teacher's pride in a student who would finally learn. As the story of Karan spread through Wardampur, it carried with it lessons as timeless as the river. 8. Time is life itself, though every second you lose is a piece of your existence gone forever. Treat it as sacred, for it's the only currency that matters. Though procrastination is a thief, though it doesn't just steal your hours, it robs you of the future you could have built. Fight it with action, no matter how small. Teen, start where you are, though you don't need the perfect moment or the perfect plan. The moment you choose to act is perfect enough. Char, discipline shapes destiny, though respect your hours, guard them fiercely, and they'll return as achievements, memories, and peace. Panch, the best time to start was yesterday. The next best time is now, though don't wait for a sign or a watch to glow red. Your heart ticking is signal enough. And so, in the quiet town of Wardampur, where hills whispered and rivers sang, Karan's story became a legend, not of a boy who dreamed, but of a man who learned to walk with time, hand in hand, toward a future he'd built, one tick at a time.